should you really be looking for in a man or woman whom you would like to marry? What is critical to have on your dating list for must haves? Also, when do you know when is the right time to break up with somebody? When do you know that, hey, actually, this is not going to work? What's the deal breaker? Also, how do you, if you're a Christian conservative, how do you wait to have sex until marriage? I know that's a tricky question. Not a lot of people want to talk about it because it's tough. Then, when is the right time to get married? There's a lot of cultures to deal with contending here. We have people telling us, don't get married until you're at least 25, don't get married until you're 30. You need to get married as quickly as possible. There's a lot to consider. So, when is the right time to get married? Then I'm going to give you all the reasons why you should not date a conservative babe. All that and more on this episode of Deconstructing the Culture. I am your host, Elisa Steele. Welcome to this week's episode of the podcast. It's a relationship special in honor of Valentine's Day. Plus, honestly, it is a year-round onslaught of relationship questions that I get from y'all on Instagram specifically. And so I like to, instead of making the entire program and the entire podcast about relationships, dedicate at least one episode a year to answering the many relationship questions that y'all send in. So a lot of questions came in. So I really had to narrow it down to the ones that there seemed to be a lot of repeat questions from different people. So I kind of just picked the ones that seemed the most applicable. And then I picked a couple that were just interesting and very specific. And I was like, hey, I'll answer this one too. Also, before we dive in really quickly, I would just ask that you take a second to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, on SoundCloud, on YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. Go ahead and leave me a 5-star review. And hey, you know what? If you don't have it in you to leave 5-star, maybe there's just something that you really hate that I do or wish that I would do, and you have some feedback, send me an email, conservativebabes@gmail.com. I read all of my emails, and I would be more than happy to hear your constructive criticism. So if you, for some reason, feel driven to give me a 4-star review, please, before you do that, or don't do that at all, just send me your constructive criticism and go ahead and leave a 5-star review. All right, now let's go ahead and dive right in because we got a lot of questions coming up. All right, so let's just start with Jen's question. Jen asks, how do you deal with judgment when you say your dream is to become a mother and homemaker? Great question, Jen, because depending on what area of the country you live in, this can definitely bring a lot of criticism. I remember I got married fairly young, for those of you who don't know, and I remember I was doing an internship in Washington, D.C., and many of my peers and even the women I was working under were very critical of me getting married at age 21 because they looked at that as kind of like me throwing my life away, which is absolutely ridiculous. Looking back now, hindsight 2020, marriage is when your life begins. I have come to a firm conclusion. You can only mature up to a certain point, and then you just need to get married to learn the other side of life, because there's some things you cannot learn until you're married, until you have to daily sacrifice and daily die unto yourself to another person and to another person's needs and wants. And just because you are giving of yourself to another person and trying to put them before you. And you know what? I'm sure that in 10 years from now, I'll look back on myself without kids and I'll think, yeah, you can't mature past a certain point until you have kids. So I've still got some significant learning ahead of me, obviously. But to answer your question, Jen, if your dream is to become a mother and homemaker, that is the most important thing you could realistically probably ever do with your life as a female. And honestly, even as a male, if you are a young man listening and one of your biggest dreams and aspirations in life is to have children and raise them well and teach them to be godly men and women, that is beautiful. Whether you were male or female, wanting to become a parent and a homemaker, some of you, even as males, might be stay-home dads. I mean, I think of Doug Johnson, Abby Johnson's husband, good friends of mine, and Doug is a full-time stay-at-home dad. and they have 8 beautiful children, and he's a phenomenal stay-at-home dad and a homemaker. Being a homemaker, being a stay-at-home parent, being a father, being a mother is a beautiful, beautiful calling. And I know that this is going to upset a lot of people because I posted about this on Instagram in the past and got a lot of hatred from a lot of even my conservative colleagues. But I do believe that it's the most impactful thing that you will ever do is to raise a family, and that no amount of being in the corporate world is realistically going to make the long term and lasting impact that raising a family will, because you are not just impacting your own family and your own children, but your grandchildren and your great grandchildren, and for many, many generations to come. And what you do today and or tomorrow when you start your family, whenever that is, it will leave you more fulfilled. I strongly believe that um, that's going to leave you with a stronger sense of fulfillment than maybe even a fulfilling career. And I'm not saying careers are evil. Careers are great. I know a lot of really amazing career women, and they do kick butt jobs and they give an amazing amounts of their talent to the world and to charity and do incredible things. But at the end of the day, even those career women will agree with you that raising a family is the most important thing that they'll do, and making an impression and making a lasting impact on those children is going to be the most important thing that they ever do. So how do you do with the criticism? Just ask them, what's your job going to do long term? What's your dream of pursuing this? What is this going to look like in 50 years from now? In 50 years from now, when I'm surrounded by my children who love their home and they love their family and they gathered with me with their children and they're comforting me in my old age, is your career going to do that for you? And don't shame them, but don't be afraid to sass them back if they decide to give you a hard time and criticize you for pursuing such an honorable thing and position in life. It's very esteemed. Sam asked, did you ever feel like you were missing out by being in a serious relationship so young? So again, Sam is referencing the fact that my husband and I met when we were very young. We didn't know, obviously, we were going to get married when we started dating very, very young. We really started dating around 17, 18. And then we got married 20 and 21. Do I feel like I missed out by being in a serious relationship that young? Sam, I'm going to give you the honest answer. Yes, I missed out on a lot. I missed out on lonely, lonely nights, wondering when I was going to meet the guy for me. I missed out on endless days living with a female roommate, finding comfort where I could, but longing for that special person who I was going to someday build a life with and build a family with. I missed out on multiple heartbreaks and huge distractions in my life dating the wrong person. I missed out on a lot of drama. So yeah, Sam, I missed out on quite a bit being in a serious relationship with the man I would marry from a young age. But do I regret any of that? Absolutely not. I am glad. I am so glad. And honestly, to anyone who finds the right person at a young age, go for it. I'm sorry, but if I had to choose between lonely, floating 20s for 10 years looking for that right person and dating lots of people, getting my heart broken, and sleeping in a bed by myself instead of snuggled up next to the man of my dreams, completely in love, starting a family with him, telling you right now, I would much, much rather miss out on all those lonely nights looking for the one, because I found him pretty darn soon. And I'm going to get to this later because someone asked when is the right time to get married, but the right time is when you find the right person. That's the short answer. Now, let's see. Michaela asked, how can you and your boyfriend wait till marriage? Now, I'm going to be straight up with you. I really only think that there's one real answer to this, and it's a lot of what me and my husband did. We dated for 3.5 years, which I do not recommend. You really shouldn't date for that long, but I'll go into that in just a second. But the truth is you really have to set hardcore boundaries and keep yourself not only hold yourself accountable, but you have to bring others alongside you and say, hey, these are our boundaries. These are our hard limits. Please keep us accountable. Because if you just rely on your own willpower and your significant other's willpower, you will fail. I'm sorry, but biology and the way your brain gets clouded over with hormones and all those feel good, yummy hormones that are so great in marriage, those can be very, very dangerous when you're dating, and they will fail you, and you will go further than you would like, and you will have regrets unless you bring in others to help you stay accountable. Now, whether that's your parents or his parents or maybe your best friends who are very, Christian and are on the same page with you and support those, that's another thing. You can't just bring in just anybody. It's got to be somebody who fully hardcore supports those same boundaries and wants that for you. And they need to preferably be authority figures, not just your best friend you can convince, oh, it was fine, or hide it from, or whatever. Maybe that's your pastor, whatever it is. How do you wait until marriage? You find accountability and then you stick to those boundaries. And I mean, some of the basic boundaries I would say is don't hang out with each other past 10 p.m. Honestly, I don't think anything really good happens after 10 p.m. It just gets harder for you to think clearly. I know that sounds so early, 10 p.m. Oh my goodness, are we grannies here? No, but you're being smart here. And my mom used to always say this, and it's kind of a joke, but it's really not a joke. My mom used to always tell me when I was a teenager, and I'd be like, Mom, he's a really good boy. And she'd be like, I don't care, you're a really good girl, but guess what? Good people make good babies. And that's just a way of saying good people can have the best of intentions and still mess up and make babies and make mistakes. Not that babies are mistakes, but having sex before marriage is a mistake. So you need to find accountability. You need to set hardcore boundaries. You need to write those down, and you need to share them with as many people as is appropriate who can hold you accountable, and don't be spending lots of time together late at night. Don't be alone a whole lot, especially when you become engaged. The temptation gets all the harder because you're so close to that marriage step that it can feel easier, can feel less sinful because, oh hey, we're almost there. Nope, you're still not married. You need to be even more careful. Try not to ever be alone, especially in that time when you're engaged. You kind of just need to, you can have private conversations in a large room with lots of other people that you love. Don't press your luck, because your body was made to love someone else. Your body and your mind and your whole self was designed by God to enjoy physical pleasure, to enjoy sex. It's a beautiful thing in the context of marriage. So do not trust yourself, because you were designed for sex. So it will betray you unless you're very, very careful. All right, there you go. Jane asks, dating for teens. I have a very simple answer for that. Don't date. If you are a teenager, to specify, if you're below the age of 18, you should not be dating. I know that those of you who are young listeners listening right now, you might be about ready to tune me out and be like, okay. No, I'm being so serious right now. You only date for 2 reasons: to get your heart broken or break someone else's heart, or to get married. Those are your only 2 options. End miserably or get married. And when you're a teenager, you're not going to get married. So you're really only wasting your time. You're wasting their time. You're spending precious amounts of energy and thought space dating while you could be focusing on your future and your education, on your family, whom you're soon going to be leaving to start your own life apart from. You really should not be dating if you're below the age of 18. And I say 18 specifically because at least at 18, if you start dating somebody, then there is if you guys are mature enough and you're financially taking care of yourself and your own bills, and you're in a good place, then you could get married legally. And then on top of that too, when you're 18, you really, and this is something I was going to talk about earlier, but I forgot. I don't think you should date for a long time. I really think by the year to year and a half mark, you should know if you're going to marry that person. And if you don't know, and if it's a big fat question mark, then it really is time to break up. And you're just like, yeah, no, if you don't know, if you don't have this gut feeling, pretty clear answer for both of you that marriage is the direction you're heading, at least by about a year. I'd say very max a year and a half, if maybe there's some long distance mixed up in that, then you really need to call it quits. I think it's absolutely ludicrous, and I know it's very popular in the East Coast culture. I'm here in Florida, for people to date for 2, 3, 4, 7, 10 years. And I'm thinking, what are you doing? Wasting each other's time. Get married or break up. Or as my mother would say, bleep or get off the pot. Um, that was crude. But no, for real, you can't be messing around, wasting each other's time, tempting temptation. It's ridiculous. You need to either know you're getting married or you're breaking up. So, all that to say, if you start dating at 18 or even like maybe late into 17, if you know find someone you really see a future with them, I'd say max maybe late 17, then you could date for a year and a half. You can get married when you're 18, 19, whatever. So I don't think teenagers should date. The only exception I would say to that is if you want to go to prom, go to prom. If you want to go to homecoming, go to homecoming. If you want to go on like a group date is what we called it when I was growing up in Utah, where it's like maybe 3 or 4 girls and 3 or 4 guys, and you kind of know who has a crush on who, but you're all hanging out and it's in an open space and no one's pairing off and going and being exclusive. It's more of an open relationship. It's more of just like we know we like each other, but it's nothing serious. Maybe we hold hands at the max. That's the only exception I could see. Maybe like 16, 17 is like group dating or group hangouts. But that's more in a friendship role and a lot less in an individual boyfriend girlfriend relationship, which I do not recommend for teenagers. That's kind of my, to put it simply, teenagers shouldn't be dating. They really shouldn't. And I say this as a hypocrite. I started dating when I was 16 and I very, very much regret it. And I think I wasted a lot of time. I think I wasted a lot of their time, the guys' times who I was dating at the time. I think I could have spent all that time and energy and drama focusing on my future instead of boys, because man, that takes up a lot of space in your head and in your life. And I think overall, there's just no reason. There's no reason to date that young. There's no good at it that can really come out of it, if you ask me. All right. Jake asks, how do you find a Christian girl in a secular environment? Well, I have a question for you. What are you doing in a secular environment? If you're looking for a Christian girl in a secular environment, it's going to be very difficult. You're going to be very hard pressed to find that Christian girl or Christian guy. If you are looking for a good Christian girl or a good Christian guy, you need to get out of the secular environment and look in your Christian environment. Look in your conservative environment. The most common question I get is, how do I find myself a conservative babe? And I say this every single time. You've probably heard me say this before, but I'm going to say it again. If you want to find a good Christian guy or girl, a good Christian conservative babe, you need to go, first of all, make yourself a Christian conservative babe. Be the kind of person that you want to attract. That's just 101 logic. But then you need to go and seek out the environment where that kind of person would be. So whether that's your church or whether that is your capital, your state capital with a lobbyist group who believes in what you believe in, whether that is at some kind of fundraising event, helping out with that, whether that is at your local pregnancy crisis center, looking for a girl or a guy who volunteers there, who also believes passionately in the pro-life movement. There are so many places, whether it's on the campaign trail, for your local candidate, for a candidate that you really believe in, you're going to find other young people who are volunteering for that candidate's campaign. Maybe it's knocking doors together, whatever it is. You need to seek out the environment where you're going to find that kind of person. So Jake, my question for you is why are you in a secular environment? You need to go get yourself out of that environment and put yourself in an environment that is not only going to help you grow to be a better person, but also is going to be the kind of pool of people where you're going to find that girl that you're looking for. All right, Sophie asks, what's your opinion on elopement with parental consent? This is one of those questions that was like very specific, and I was like, okay. So, Sophie, you were the only person who asked me this question, but I decided to answer it anyways. The answer is simple. If you are wanting to elope and you need parental consent, you probably better get it, because that probably means that you're not legally of age. So yeah, you should get parental consent. Now, if you'd like to elope and you are past the age of needing parental consent, do whatever the heck you want. Weddings are expensive. You want to go elope and just start your marriage, start your life, get married in the eyes of God and a couple of witnesses, go do it. Like, whatever floats your boat. Like, but if you need parental consent, you better be getting that. That's all I gotta say there. Jen asks, how do you plan a God honoring wedding? We are both from different churches. He is Catholic, I am Jewish Christian. Jen, I'm gonna be straight up with you. I'm not gonna sugarcoat this. I am sorry if this is going to offend you, but you're not Jewish Christian, you're confused. Let me say that again. You say he's Catholic and you're Jewish Christian. No, you are confused. You cannot be both Jewish and Christian at the same time. Jews don't believe in Christ. Being a Christian, the definition is believing in Christ, in his resurrection, and being God. Those two don't mix. Unless you are saying you are ethnically Jewish and you religiously are Christian, then I can see that. But I don't see any explanation for that in your question. So I'm just going to assume that you think that you're Jewish and Christian. You're not. You're confused. You need to find clarity. I don't know that I would move forward with a wedding until you have solidified your religious beliefs. I don't think that's healthy. I don't think that's going to be healthy for you or for him. And even if you were really set on either just being Christian or just being Jewish, I really very, very, very strongly caution you against marrying someone who is not on the same of the same faith that you are. Not to say that it's impossible. I know that there is the anomaly that does make that work, but in general, that doesn't usually work. Usually you need to have the same values, the same religion, same faith. It's just so important. It is, if you are a faith based person and that is very, and you live your life actually being a faithful person, not just saying, hey, I'm a Christian and then not going to church, but if you actually do live your faith, then this is not just something that you can each go live your own thing. He goes to Catholic mass and you go to, a Christian church. That's not going to work, especially as soon as children are in the picture. I'm sorry, honey, that's not going to work. And you know what? Contrary to popular belief, love is not enough. You cannot just love each other enough to make this difference go away, because it won't. It will intensify with time and it will intensify with children. I really strongly caution you against going forward with a wedding if you're not on the same faith place. And you really, and the hard part about this too is you really can't convert each other, because you're not going to really know if that's a true conversion or if it's a conversion for the sake of the other person without a real heart change. So I'm really sorry, but I just don't see how this is going to work for you and your boyfriend. I mean, but nothing's impossible with God. So I would just take a lot of prayer and I would really find some clarity in your own faith before moving forward with such a massive life decision. All right, now Tommy, tying into that question, Tommy asked, converting a significant other to a religion. I kind of already covered that a little bit. I don't think you can. I don't think you can convert your significant other over to your religion. I think they have to find their own faith before they find you. They can't find it through you, because then they're living their faith through you, or using your faith and feeling like it's theirs. I don't think that you really are in a good, healthy place if you're first of all dating someone who's not the same religion as you. But I don't think that you can really convert someone else in a romantic relationship. Yes, you can convert another person, but in a romantic relationship, it's just too mixed. I don't recommend you try and convert to your significant other, but I do recommend that you have a conversation, and it's going to probably break both your hearts, but I really don't think that relationship's going to work. And I think rather than wasting each other's time, I think you should probably break up, Tommy. Just going to be honest with you. All right. An anonymous person asks, any tips for Valentine's Day? This is super simple. I don't think Valentine's Day is a really big deal. I know that our secular world, much like how we made basically every industry and another reason to spend a ton of money, Valentine's Day is the same. I think the sweetest, most romantic thing you can do for Valentine's Day is to make a handmade card. It doesn't even have to be super simple, but write heartfelt feelings inside of it, and I guarantee you she or he will find that card more meaningful and hold on to it for many more years to come than a card that you spent $5 on and signed your name to. And flowers are great if you want to do that. Flowers are really a girl's best friend, but you don't need to break the bank. You don't need to break the budget. Valentine's Day is just a sweet way of reminding your loved one that you love them. But my tip is just don't go overboard. You don't need to go crazy. Make a big deal for their birthday, even maybe make a big deal for Christmas. But I guess I'm just not really a Valentine's Day freak. I know some people who really are, but It's just never been a super important holiday to me. All right. Loki asks, do you feel you have enough experience to answer relationship questions? Well, thank you for asking. No, actually, I don't. Compared to somebody who's been married for 50 years, definitely not. Even compared to someone who's been married for 15 years, no, I don't. But as someone who has been in a relationship with her husband for over 6 years now and has been married for almost 3 years now, who has suffered some intense life trials together, who has suffered a lot of family drama to get to this point in our life, to have gone through a miscarriage last year and found how that affected our relationship. Yeah, I do feel like I have something to offer, as somebody who was able to figure out dating long distance for a while, someone who was able to figure out how to not have sex before marriage. I do think I do have some to offer, and that's kind of what I'm giving you. Full disclaimer, obviously, I am not an expert. I did not go to school for this. Everything you hear in this podcast and every other podcast on relationships is just from exclusively my personal experience and my opinions. Obviously, if you talk to me in 10 years, maybe everything will be different. Who knows? But if you have better relationship advice, you are welcome to share that with me in an email, and I will consider sharing it here, because chances are most of you have your own opinions to offer you, and many of you have been in relationships and been married much longer than I have and have much more to share. This is just my 2 cents. So thanks for asking. Ellie asks, what to look for in a future spouse? I've covered a little bit of this, but essentially, you need to know, number one, love is not enough. Love is never enough. You cannot cover love over all the sins of a relationship and think it's going to work. It's not. Marriage is built on common values, and long after your fireworks have calmed down, you still need to have those commonalities to hold you to, and a family together. And in the dating world, basically, there are 4 major tips that I'm going to offer. Obviously, everyone's got to find their list of what they need in a marriage, but I would say the 4 biggest things that I would look for is, number one, you have to share the same faith. I think this is an absolute must. Next in that, but kind of tying is you need to share the same basic views in politics. So he can't claim that he's a Christian, but then say he's pro-abortion. That doesn't tie in with your faith. He can't say he is a Christian, but he believes in communism. No, because that is theft. She cannot say that she is a Christian but never ever wants to have children. I think that's anti-biblical. The Bible says that children are a blessing. And I guess that leads me to my third is you need to share the same views on raising a family and if you want children or not, and then also how many children you want. I have seen heartbreak, severe heartbreak, and people who did not have this conversation, and maybe the father wanted maybe 5 or 6 kids and the mom she was done at 2, and that has been a severe source of grief. You need to agree on what kind of family you're going to have, whether that's going to be homeschool or private school or public school. That is going to make a really big difference. For my husband and I know number one, or not number one, but top 10 in his list was he wanted to marry a woman who would be willing to be a stay-at-home mother who would homeschool. And top 10 in my list was I needed to marry somebody who would support me and be not just supportive but want me to be a stay-at-home mother and homeschool our children. So we found that commonality that you need to agree on how you're going to raise a family. And you might think in those beginning love haze moments, oh, we don't need to talk about that, we just love each other, we'll make everything work. No, honey, you need to have this discussion before you get really serious. You need to talk about how many children, or if you want any children or not. It's just very vital that you have those conversations. And then fourth, and probably not, I would say definitely the lowest on the totem pole for these 4 things, but very, very helpful, is you need to have some common hobbies. Things that bring you closer together, that you can enjoy together. No, watching TV together or watching Netflix, binging for hours does not count. Over time, your relationship will continue, and then all of a sudden just being together isn't enough. Maybe to make you feel that extreme high, you need hobbies that bring you closer together, that bring that feeling of companionship. So find some things that you enjoy doing together, whether that is playing tennis or reading together or playing chess or board games. My husband and I are big into board games. Like one of our favorite things to do when we're having a down day. I mean, we love our Disney days too. We're Disney season pass holders, but one of our favorite things to do together is we love to do Bible study together, and we also really, really enjoy board games. We can play board games for hours and hours and hours. In fact, I'm pretty sure the first year of our marriage, we went through this phase where we really didn't want to hang out with anybody else because we were so just loving marriage, and we still do love marriage. But we really just like, people were always like, what are they doing at home all the time? Well, get your mind out of the gutter. Basically, all we were doing is playing endless hours of Sequence, Ticket to Ride, and sometimes poker. Yep. So that is one of our hobbies. We have many other hobbies. We also like to snorkel together. We love nature. We're both really passionate about nature and wildlife. So we have a lot of shared hobbies, but I would just encourage you to find someone who, maybe even if you don't have a common hobby at the beginning, maybe you create that. So, all right, whatever's on your list, but basically at the end of the day, you need to have shared common values because love is not enough. Keep that in mind. Now, we're running out of time, so I'm going to hurry up. But Maddie asked, in dating, if things aren't good, how do you break up? Or how do you know to break up? So first of all, I mentioned that year to year and a half mark. Preferably, you wouldn't waste that much time if it's very obvious that you need to break up. But again, I come back into, do you have common values? Do you share the same faith? Do you want the same amount of kids? Do you want to raise your kids the same? Where do you want to live? Are you willing to be flexible for the other person? Do you have your heart set on living in a specific place? You need to figure out those very soon, and so hopefully you can cut off the chance of wasting each other's time very early on. But then my last question, or my last, how do you know when to break up, is if you've reached that about year mark, if you don't know pretty sure that you want to marry them, probably a good idea to say goodbye. And just, it's gonna hurt, but you need to not waste each other's life, because every minute that you spend with them, you are preventing them from finding the right person, and you are preventing yourself from finding the right person. You need to look at it in an overall good light for both of you. Rachel asks, what are some ways that you take care of your home and husband? I'm still learning this, and I love watching your transparent dynamic with your husband. How did you create that atmosphere at home? Thank you, Rachel. That is really sweet of you. We really worked really hard on that. So short story, the first year of our marriage, I only did my own laundry, and I just let his pile up and up and up. It got really smelly, and I hate smelly laundry, so eventually I'd wash it, dry it, and then put it on the guest bed and just keep putting it on the guest bed. And the next thing you know, there's this giant pile of laundry, and he's not folding it or putting it away. And I look back now and I'm thinking, Lisa, what were you thinking? That was really selfish. My husband works really, really hard. He works full time. He goes to school full time, and compared to that, I have a relatively flexible schedule. Definitely compared to his schedule. So hindsight 2020, just stop thinking. Don't think of chores as a 50-50. They're never going to be a 50-50. Sometimes my husband does way more cooking than I do. Oftentimes for long stretches of time, I do more cooking than he does. If you think of your marriage and you think of your household as a 50-50, someone's always going to be ripped off. Somebody's always going to be carrying more than their 50%, and someone will always be unhappy. And that's going to be a cause of contention. So just give that up, both of you. Don't ever think of your marriage or household duties or even life duties to be 50-50, because then you're constantly looking to see how you can get your exact 50% and make sure that they're not slacking. That's not what marriage is about. Marriage is not about keeping score. It's not about making sure the other person does their exact half. Marriage is about sacrifice. It is about thinking about the other person before yourself, and it is about thinking, what can I do to make their life easier? What can I do to make their life better? And you're not going to find that. You're going to find yourself very dissatisfied if it's constantly trying to look out for you and look out for what you need and what you want and what's going to make you fulfilled. But I can guarantee your whole marriage will change once you make that flip and that switch into, how do I make this the best marriage for them? And your whole life will change. I can make a whole episode on that, but I will leave that there for now. Julie asked, what are your views on using contraception in the context of marriage? I did an entire podcast on this. I believe it's called birth control. And the long and the short is, I don't think it is the end of the world to use a contraceptive that doesn't allow the egg to become fertilized. So, for instance, like a condom or natural family planning, I think that's probably fine in marriage. There are various times in your married life, maybe right after a miscarriage or right at the beginning of your marriage, where you might not want to get pregnant right away. I do think that's okay. I am very, very against any kind of birth control that is going to cause a fertilized egg to die. And I go into detail into what contraceptives are okay and what ones are very, very wrong in that episode, Birth Control. So I'd highly recommend you check that out, and I talk more about this subject. And then the last question is, when is the right time to get married? I could tell you a whole long story on this, but basically, there is no right or wrong time to get married. If you're 18 and you find the right person, get married. If you're 38 and you found the right person, get married. There's no right or wrong time to get married. It doesn't matter if you've graduated college yet or if you are 35. Obviously, I would always suggest and recommend you aim for younger, especially if you want children. There is a fertility drop at 30 and another larger fertility drop at 35 for women. So if you want a family, or especially a big family, I would always aim for a little bit younger, but the honest answer is the right time to get married is when you find the right person. So with that said, I am going to ask that you subscribe and leave a review. And last but not least, I'm going to tell you all the reasons why you should not date or marry a conservative babe. So do not date a conservative babe if you want patriotic children, or if you don't want patriotic children. So if you're just like, I don't want my kids to be patriotic, I want them to hate America, don't marry a conservative babe. If you don't want children who believe in the sanctity of life, don't marry a conservative babe. If you want a husband or wife who is going to be open to an open marriage, don't marry a conservative babe, because we're very much for the sanctity of marriage as well. But on the other hand, if you want a husband or wife who will be faithful to you, who will raise patriotic children, who raise children who believe in protecting innocent human beings, if you want a husband or wife who might be open to being a stay-at-home parent to be the primary influence on your children, if you want a husband who believes in being the leader of his family and being the spiritual head of the house, if you want a husband or wife who believes in taking an active role in their children's education, whether that's homeschooling or being on the PTA board or whatever that is, if you want a spouse who believes in giving charity and helping those in need, if you want a spouse who goes to church weekly to fellowship with other believers, if you want a wife and a husband who's going to dress modestly and take care of the body that God has given them to steward, if you want all of those things and more, marry a conservative babe. Because a conservative babe, I believe, is the best pick in the world for a spouse. And if you want a conservative babe who believes in protecting marriage and fighting hard for it because it is a God-ordained, blessed union from God, marry a conservative babe. But if you don't want that, don't marry one. All the more power to you. God bless you. God bless America. Have a great day.
Hey there. Thanks for watching this episode of the podcast. Seriously, I hope you walked away with the answers that you were looking for, and maybe if you heard an answer you weren't looking for, it could spread some enlightenment, help you out on your relationship problems. If you like this episode, feel free to go check out my other relationship episode. I believe it's titled Relationships for Dummies. And then you'll also enjoy some other podcasts I've done out there. For sure, also check out my relationship episodes that have to do with pornography. You're really going to want that information if you haven't already studied about pornography and the effects on the brain. So go check out No Porn November and Pornography Kills Love. And then again, like always, remember to like, subscribe, leave a 5-star review. And if you had feedback, remember I am always reachable at my email, conservativebabes@gmail.com, or Instagram message me. All right, have a great day. God bless.